forbearance. Like when someone does something wrong, then it hurts me also. I know that like we talked about how the other person feels, but if someone does something wrong, then it hurts me also. And then how do I feel like? How does it affect the person who is facing it? And how can we? What can we tell ourselves?
So then when we're talking about forbearance, then it's a little bit different than just bearing through a situation. Just bearing through a situation. Wherein even though we have all that anger, all that sense of unpleasant thoughts in our head, and then we still like bear through the situation. This does not constitute forbearance. Forbearance is the lack of anger in these moments. This we need to understand first, and then if we understand that, then we begin to realize the implications of actually practicing forbearance. So if you cannot find it in yourselves to like not be angry in situations when you feel you are harmed, then it's important that not to foolishly kind of bear through that situation. You understand? Then it's important in those times to kind of put a distance between yourself and that person, and try to not to be in contact with them all the time until you feel confident enough in your practice, wherein you do not feel a sense of anger to that person. Then you can begin to kind of confront that person, come in contact with them. Otherwise, then you're just kind of bearing through a situation that you do not like, and then mentally you are disturbed. Mentally, like you are angry all the time. This is not the practice of forbearance. So maybe I would encourage you to think of the whole group as a spiritual group, and think of all of us as spiritual friends. And can you try to be more specific with like an example wherein like you have trouble practicing forbearance, and what are the challenges like in that specific situation? And so then we can try to address it.
I didn't get it. I didn't get it. Like think in the practice or now?
No. Think of everyone of us as your spiritual friends. Do not have like a sense of hesitation that people are going to judge you. And try to think of like a specific situation wherein like you find this difficulty in practicing forbearance, and what are the specific challenges that makes it difficult for you.
I can't think of it.
Tanda sama korgi mundus.
kare chidang kangi kar chidang ita so the year or ya chikangi to the major mandi cha ne ke di tsama cha ba tsama su de kashi tsama su da du da de sha ke ka ne mu de chidang zo 공부 제 유리 연대서는 얘가 저요 봐 제가 심의를 이제 심의 매달 가다니는 가부치는 거죠 어저기 자당 농사기 제사지 공부 제사이나 자바 제사이나 시대를 마음을 대체하는 아주 마음제 그리고 수수다 그게 상관이라 다른 분과 근데 좀 따이 되지 내가 제가 무슨 일을 좀 많이 planteio de vida.
So then it really comes down to assessing the situation a little bit objectively. So when you say that it hurts me also in this situation, I am also being harmed, but then as a result of this, saying that I'm also being harmed, and then you act out of anger in the situation, and then confront that person very aggressively and violently, then does it begin to alleviate your sense of harm or a sense of hurt? No, it actually adds on to this. So in Tibetan we have a saying that if the cat gets too close to the fire, then its whisker gets burnt. So this means that when you place yourself in the line of fire, to use that phrase, actively put yourself in that line of fire of that angry person, or the person you are angry with, then naturally it doesn't help the situation. Both of you are acting aggressively, and the sense of hurt and harm actually becomes more magnified after that. It doesn't begin to mitigate that. So then, as we already talked about, how it's important, if you do not find it in yourself to be not angry in these moments, to kind of put some distance between yourself and the situation of the person. Yes.
Question about this. It's been how when we're talking about these things, we're talking about how the situation should be, how I should not be angry or maybe stay. But I'm a beginner right now. What's the middle way? When we're just starting the practice, then we can't be just I can tell myself, I have an intention that, okay, I would want to be angry, but when the situation happened and being a beginner, it's so difficult. So is there a middle way?
So then, when we're talking about how we need to cultivate these into our lives, then it's important to remember that rather than thinking about generally, then try to think about a day one day, and try to think about one day wherein you begin to wherein you begin to accept that there might be the possibility that I might be irritated, I might be angered by other people. And when you begin to do that, then you begin to understand the importance of mindfulness. So in that situation, mindfulness is very important, to realize that this is anger that I'm feeling right now. Most of the time we do not even give ourselves the chance to recognize that, because we are so emotional, we respond very emotionally. So we need to have that mindfulness to recognize that this is anger. And if we recognize that this is anger, then we can begin to remember all these discussions that we had about how anger is not something good and it can have negative effects. And how if you cannot let go of this anger, then important to put kind of a distance between yourself and the source of anger. So maybe when we talk about mindfulness in this manner, then it's better to kind of explore it with an idea, an example. Now, this is not to say that I have waged war myself, but let's see the way a soldier is trained for war or for battle. So a soldier doesn't begin to immediately shoot random people. He's trained tactically. First, when he's trained, he's taught about the tactical importance, the technical points of using a gun, so on and so forth. But he isn't in that situation, the real situation of war at that point. But then when he goes to war, he has to remember all this. Now this is the situation that he has to be mindful that this situation has come to be now. And then he begins to use all that tactical instructions, so forth. So similarly, mindfulness is like that, affording yourself the opportunity to realize that this is the situation I am in, and this is anger arising in me. So if you have that, then you have the basis upon which to remember all this discussion that we had and your own contemplations about anger. You can remember them at that point. Otherwise, we always act out of as an emotional response, and then we forget everything.
Can I add something to it? Something that helped me. So two things. First of all is to understand, I'll say, first of all, when you realize that you're angry, if you can take a break, because sometimes it's very difficult to actually calm ourselves, but just to step away from the situation, I actually just walk out of the room or something, because it's better to not engage than just to say something. But again, something that helped me is then to sit, to breathe and to meditate and to understand what am I feeling in my body, and then do the body sensations. And I think I don't know if that's what you've done in the meditation, but the body sensation of anger, and then it's much easier to recognize next time when you feel, because before we actually lash out, we have the sensations in the body, and it's hard to recognize, but through practice, it's I feel here in my throat and chest, for example. So when it comes, I'm like, okay, something is wrong. Now something is off, and then okay, what is going on? It's easy. It's really far from being perfect, and it will take lifetime to actually be good at it. But I think it helps, and it really improves over time.
그런 데들스 이 소주네 디 베제베제 그런냐 민주네 그런나 펜도 부주주라 아니 롱사데서 뭐 담보디 있으라 롱사사다 남상 소소소라 발생도 때 개침 버렸어 디스는 저시주로 뒤주태야 아니 디스 장가린스 때 개침 버렸어 디치마도 아니 리다냠도스라 네 먼저게도 남주 류템바냐샤라 지시게라 아니 류템바냐샤 소아템바냐샤라 지시게라 아니 갑자기 좀 semna semsor직 리기 나스라다 녀몽게 차베 차잖아 공도도 지기 나스라 공도래 디 나저기 류나나 소아게지 축침보다 류프랑 데마데 라바다래라 미바다메라 니카이 왜라 근데 소아 류기 소아 축침을 리기다스 류기 좀 레바게지 나저 semna 초기적인 아주 소마토나 야스라 류기 류다 소기지 가로스 이 전반이 셔트만 소토 그러스 전반이 셔트나스라 전반이 셔트나 아니 아주 소토 그러스 이 소나 아니 공로 임바 뭐 지토에기 고업시로 가스 디그 지토나니 야고도스 공로 임바 뭐 지치토라 아니 삼성 아주 공로 서비스 뭐 공로 임바 그런 거 지치토고 말스 심시 그러스 소와도 못하네
나도 그냥 정말 야고다 공로를 가르쳐 봐 어디 공투도 가르쳐 봐 정말 되내로 되는 게 어디야보다 사실 이 공로라 야 윤내다 자기 거미 빼다보다 두수 이게 거 뺀진 두수 나도 뽑았지 티베도 너도 보라 현재 상황이다 공로도 이루어지는 거야 빵 걸리고 당가 빵 부분들에 되게 대시로 땅이다 이번에 로컬 로그 쇼 카쇼나 배워
So then I really am impressed by the way you approach these teachings and the way you approach anger as an emotion, anger as an affliction. You have come to an understanding that anger actually is not something good for yourself as well as for others. Where this is coming to such a place is a difficult thing in the first place, because many people kind of look at anger as something positive, saying that if I retaliate, then I have some sort of bragging rights, and then if I say something harsh back and the person is silent and doesn't react back to me, then you develop a sense of pride in yourself. So this is a misguided idea about the qualities of anger. But you have come to a place wherein you are able to accept that anger actually is not something positive. It is negative. It has negative consequences for ourselves as well as others. So this itself is a big thing.
라이브 시도는 어디서 가르치는 거야? 가마카신 거. 그거 유튜브잖아. 그거 찍이들은 말로서 지금 너무 늦지. 다그 문이 가만히 봐. 자기들 내는 놔두고 말로 내고. 가마카신 거. 저라라 봐요. 교가지는 그런 지. 뒤두자. 뒤도 뭐. 봐. 아까 그냥 말이 저저 보고 뭐 그냥 말들이 그렇게 선지가지. 난 어디라. 이 말에 엔들라니야. 정보나로 저 가는 미디베 가디 맞아. 유튜브 쇼이나. 다들 주셔도 좋은데요. 감사합니다. 저 가르쳐도 되는 라고야 말에 가만히 있는 저 가는 중에 애들 다들 걸 따라봐. 저 가상 그쪽에 가상 예매 되지. 다리 지다. 그냥 뭐 루야 빠른 나도 파도 해야 되지. 쓴다. 이거는 도저로. 야, 지금 차단 중이만 충분해서 야 빠르다. 아카시기 파기를 지금 증리 발에 그 서도 나들이 그 너무 좋다. 그걸 지금 나보다 버버를 지다.
So this is important to realize that it's a big thing to come to an acceptance of the negative effects of anger or these afflictions, because when we think we should not take this for granted, because in many situations hello Chitsa and so many times we kind of, if we have not come to an acceptance of this, then many times we kind of stoke the fire and gaslight people. For example, like if we can see parents, and then if their child gets into fight with someone else's child, and then they come home, and then like if the child didn't fight back, then the parents sometimes say like, don't you have hands? Why didn't you use them? You are not man enough. And then if in friend circles too, like some people say that if their friend and someone else gets into a fight, and then this friend didn't hit back, then the friend kind of gaslight the people, saying that don't you have hands? You're not man enough. You didn't handle the situation, So all of these is the dangers. These are the dangers of not coming to an acceptance that anger is not something positive. Because with that mistaken conception, then you begin to actively contribute to other people's suffering by gaslighting them, by giving them the wrong notion. So this is important, to coming to an acceptance of this fact first.
control Jalade, Kadijama, control Nadio. My Shiju, which you cut that, control is Lasa Major.
So then, rather than that, then like if the parents are able to kind of let go of this, saying that it's just children behaving like this, right? There are bound to be some sort of altercation when they are children. And then like even though there is anger in the parent themselves and in the child, but now you are given or you actually afford yourself and the child the space to kind of lose anger, not to always be like, gaslighting it, not be always like so emotionally charged. You actually afford yourself the space and time, both the child and the parent, to kind of calm down a little bit and assess the situation carefully. So this is very important. So have you ever had like your parents gaslight you like this when you had a fight?
Yes. We live in a society that does that. I mean, that kind of a question that I also have that we can live with. It's like, it's so difficult to do it, and also how can we grow next generations of those people when we have people from the government, every country, are behaving this way, so disrespectful to other people, always like, I'm the big man, I'm the winner. It's like, it's really sad for me to see it. Basically complete disrespect. It's always about winning. It's always about being the number one. It's always about stepping on other people. And then of course we have a world full of suffering that people just behave this way and make themselves miserable.
Redi Kuranzula Nyamyo Yesra Morana Thosamling ni ba chizo kurang yora dinde do ji namba jila tungu dosra ani masel lumba tizo dinde tungu dos chizo nana misu wang yu tsa yu ni di ya ga khosa do jila le do dos ani chezan be kha bu dos. Anyone else had this experience?
Yeah. Like in my culture, they say that, especially to children, they say that, if someone hit you once, you hit twice.
What? If somebody hits you once, hit back twice.
Okay, yeah, that's similar to something my mom told my sister.
Kunzu bugu chinjuyinde zambasra mil chindagi tsuchik shunasra panista shubore lajo. Dide yoris. Ni shinda kora shinda digi kurang ajaga nima amagi dide lapcha jajo khonyos. Tita wera. Tsuchik lumna pani lubore lajo.
Jagai kita mesti. Duk lena re. Ese bolte na. Itu cina orang orang. Kan duk partai orang na yang marah. Kasih lagi duk partai orang sele.
So there's an Indian saying, if I'm not wrong, which says that suffering or tension is something to be given, not to be taken. Which is very misguided when we think about it.
Di ini nanti kontrol dah lagi dah hamus. Ama masih baju ni, kaya nanti lapjar lagi ya. Kaya tapi so nanti shooting boleh. Lalu padu ni jauh, selai mana dia. Mungkin sampai lah dah. So pas mungkin dia mana. Nanti tak dah hamus dah. Katu tak nambil dunia partai, so mana nanti lupa. Tapi nanti zaman nanti mila selai mau cie je, micin. Ini macam lagi mana nanti mana tak nambil.
Sense of cheer lagi So then maybe this we are reading like this saying wrong, in the sense that it's not really talking about inflicting suffering on other people. It's talking about stressing. Stress is not something that should be taken. It should be something that's given. It kind of is told. I think it's an Indian lady actually told me this saying. So So I think it kind of talking about how one should how one should behave in a society wherein you do not incur losses and losses and what do you call exploitation in society. So it comes from a place like that, wherein you shouldn't like take unnecessary stress upon yourself. This is the kind of message I think it intends to share, rather than our reading, wherein we say that maybe it's to inflict active harm and stress on other people.
इसका मतलब क्या है?
मतलब क्या है?
लेना है, लेना
Tension.
नहीं लेना। आप लोग
I feel like it's about sharing also, like don't take stress. Means like the other person is trying to comfort you, like share, speak out, do something about it, don't sit with it. It's like a very comforting thing. Like you're not alone.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
You don't have to just bear all of it all yourself. We are here for you.
Yes, yes. ज़्यादा मुझे नहीं हो रहा, टेंशन लेने का नहीं देने का है. So it's more about how, like, when you say give your suffering or give your tension or give your stress to others, it's actually talking about how you should learn to share your stress and your suffering with other people, to not suffer alone.
이런 저 되게 공로로 이미 파티하고 쓸래 드립니다. 가서 또 강의 주나 강의도 파시했지. 그래서 강의 좀 로. Thank you. Yes, nice. So when someone tells their kids like, okay, you got hit, hit them hard next time or something, I think that is one to safeguard, one to prepare the kid for the world that they are going to be facing, because it's tough. It's maybe that's a way of them to embolden the child, and also about having the wrong view that big and bad and bold is like what thrives, and if you are soft and you get cornered. So I mean, yeah, how do we?
And the question?
And the question is, so like, how do we come to an understanding, like, that softness is good and that, all this forbearance? I mean, we know because we have studied the Dharma and all, right? But largely in the world, the bullies, and they are the ones who know, they are the ones who gets followed. I mean, the karmic effects come long after, like, everything is done. So the immediate, it prevails. Immediately, the bullying and the power and the strength, the might prevails. So where
제가 데르다 다긴 안서 기부 친주지 랍자 자야죠. 건설 로서 로바디 자기로 왔어. 파마다 저기 제심이 지지처럼 슈나스라 팔아파 팔아 슈드좀 파슈체스 니츠슈다로데. 디 고바 좀세는 요래래죠. 가자나 점링래다 지소래죠. 디 아니 민념충래죠. 아니 미장보드줄라 아니 통샤기 말했어. 아니 소소랑 차고고래. 디 고바 좀세는 시에 보여서. 아니 지단 점링나 다가랑 로스. 디스 왕랑 첨부. 아니 한바사고. 아니 디스 미차보리인데 나스라. 코랑 신기다. 칼로 코사이토네 도와. 아니 주노롱주노이네 거기 한바친데 kuruchiyan goyas. Ani ta mijambo minyam chung la jara. Tela ka duyene jonghara joji thonggeras. Le jumde gone shena di mariba mandiba rela na yasra. Le miye di tsechima la mirgiras. Le miye di sedigara la miye ki chabach mindoas. Cheza ngoye la khay la ki duna ta yum dizamba ani minyam chung de la chongharawa. Mijambo de la chongharawa. Ani mi di trabo wanda chembo 함시 chembo. 텔라니 첩상라데 주시 통교로스.
네, 아주 다른 친구 거기 계산하게. 이 계산을 그 중과를 해서. 그럼 빌레지게 거기 공동이 시소를 따라하는 장면에 아니 코로나 조고동으로 되는데 거기 이쪽은 예바 있나 있다. 봐. 안지와 심마이는 거기 뭐 살던데 대중 밀리스테르데. 마음부터 되게 있고 배 내 와요시 통주 제대로 내가 담담을 주는 아무 저 가는 하고 저 원래 이 한번 삼도 그래야 돼 먼저 애들 땅을 한번 저기 계산하기로 통도 원래야 내가 이나야라 그대로 통고 지금自动에 누서 원래 이 답은 진이요 말 그걸 내 거에 지기 스스 나온 다 친구들 벨레도 오더니 야보서 얘기 생빙가니 요 말. 자, 중 아스니 원래 이 한번 삼도 그래야 차
So then, this kind of this kind of benefits that we see in being a big, bold, outspoken, and like powerful in the world. Then, when we think about it, then these people who kind of push themselves to the front all the time, then begin to like step on soft people, and so on and so forth. Now, at the outset, they might have material possessions, they have status, but the human experience is defined by the relations, the interactions, and in these relations and in these interactions, we develop a sense of contentment, satisfaction, fulfillment. Would such a person have this kind of sense of fulfillment, satisfaction, and contentment? It is very difficult for such a person to have that. And if they do not have a sense of fulfillment, contentment out of the relationships, then happiness is something something that is happiness. A true sense of happiness is something that cannot be achieved with this kind of way of life. And why? Now, why does his relations and interactions with people does not give him contentment, fulfillment, and satisfaction? Because the relationships would not be genuine and would not be meaningful. People would only act out of a sense of fear, not out of respect. People will act out of a sense of interact and act with this person with a sense of expectation that he is powerful, so I will seek his protection. And as soon as it might be the case, as soon as he loses power, then the relation is no longer there. So no real sense of contentment and happiness can come from such an approach. Yes.
I think also their relationship with themselves is definitely not a good one, which is probably the worst. We don't have inner peace because they behave this way.
Tini Koranda Mishinagi Barala Devati Yanda Bachimai Bara, Devati ne Semsimia Major Chibumai Basra. Korangi Tazujura, so la Tazuti, Midinde Hamshi Chimbo Zura, Consusimla Devachi Shira Yumaris, Kadin Namsa Chimburu Chiburis.
옛날에 얘기도 좀 와이신이라 그 저놈 저 처음에 kello jigman beu chi shi so mi thong chile no thong cha chi ra ni ngaran simba ding na no jo ra ni chula khati cha ji zo tu ni je de di ma su de jo a tu ni ga ni de wa di be tu la ya chi chi ni mi ta na mi shi ba ta na ko te pe tu je ko ko no o pe shi so sa chi chi so simba bu le ya te ta ko ka di tu na ma de wa chi lo su na 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 le thong do chi ma di na Dati kile lede gana sini susu dibat sam jamu sasa. Kalau maga baca tu kau kontrol lain na ti dibat sam yes. Jadi tak pandang pandang tu macam susu kontrol lain je na. Kisah raya dia macam mana susu nongol le. Kasih mi orang tuan cakap bola baca, lunjata cakap bola, bodoh bola, change tu. Tak mesti suci cakap je. Nampak yang baru tu. Jadi mata tu macam mana dia orang tu. Macam maga ya, macam makan nongol je orang tu. Tinggal tu pun tak.
So then, yes, this is true. So let's say that I begin to harass you, I begin to exploit you, and then I begin to belittle you in front of everybody. And then if I do that, then of course, in the depth of my heart, there is that itch that I have done something to this person. There is that sense of unease. Now, whether this takes the shape of guilt or not, this is another matter. But there is this sense of unease within himself, within myself, that I have acted this way to this person. And now when I see you every day, then there is this sense of unease becomes even more potent. this is the kind of practical effects of adopting such an attitude towards life, an approach towards life, wherein you begin to bully whoever you can, step on whoever you can in order to reach places of power, places of profit. And from the dharmic perspective, then of course you accrue and accumulate the causes and conditions for a very bad life in your rebirths. But yes, so we need to kind of think about. It's important to kind of think about the importance of relation, how like relations should be meaningful, and how relations should be genuine. And this comes from an acceptance of the interdependent nature of all of us. That diram tendele tae kichimbora ani manzochi sosorangi chaiwado samudangida yago chana kaduina wangchimbo chana ngara rangi jundangi chain samsamro shingora. So then at this point it is also important to remember that particular verse from Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, wherein he says that all happiness in this world comes from wishing happiness for others, and all suffering in this world comes from wishing happiness only for ourselves. So it talks about how like happiness is not something that is causeless, how happiness is not something self-created. Happiness depends upon a lot of causes and conditions, a lot of interrelations. So it's important to remind ourselves of this too, in the context of cultivating forbearance as a practice. Now, moving on, when we're talking about the actual perfection of forbearance, then what is the mark of the perfection of forbearance? Then in the Guru Puja text, prayers, then it goes on to explain it in this manner. Even if all the sentient beings in all the spheres, all the realms begin to criticize you, begin to scold you, begin to belittle you, and begin to like actively harm your own life, then it is the mark of a supreme practitioner to not to retaliate even then, but rather to actively benefit these sentient beings.
사람 중요해야 뭐 그냥 때문에 저거 지금 가지나 자기 미리 코스아야 이걸 지지도 이마 지지들이지 상파신인 그거 그거는 나도 애들 하고 들었어 나도 지지 좀 보셔야 돼요
So then, sometimes it's also the case that even though in that instance or for immediate purposes, we like from the outset feel like someone is tolerating and someone is practicing forbearance, and then they are now they are now somehow like suffering a loss in that situation. This is what we like kind of see on the outset. That when you try to be tolerant in a situation and someone begins to scold you, belittle you, or criticize you, and then if you tolerate that, then for other people that looks like this person is like at a loss now. But then like when you think about long term, and that same person begins to like belittle, criticize, and scold you again and again and again, and you never like you tolerate all the time, and you never give in to anger, then sometimes it is the case that this person develops a sense of embarrassment. The person who is the instigator develops a sense of embarrassment that even if I always do this, this person never gives in to anger. And then he begins to understand the qualities of the practice of forbearance himself. So from such a moment we understand that the importance of embarrassment too as a mental factor in our understanding of not giving into afflictions. Yes. Sure.
Just a story to support what Vishnu is just saying, and to hear your feedback. There was when I was in secondary school. I wanted to earn money for a bicycle on my own without asking parents, so I was working in the nursing home during the summer holiday. And I was working a lot, 2 months with 3 days free, meaning everything else was just working, because I also wanted to save some for a holiday. It is in nursing home. It will be hard work, getting up and so on. But at the end, when the payment time came, the lady who was responsible for payment claimed that they worked only 1 month and wanted to give me a payment only for 1 month. So confused about that, how to do, how to act. I was thinking and talking to talking to my colleagues and talking to my parents, to my mother and so on, and thinking on my own. The colleagues said sue her because they were witnesses that I was working. It would be easy to prove. My mother, who is a very devoted, good Christian, had 2 different attitudes. One is she never wished to get into fight, and she was not used to fighting. But the strongest reason was that as a very contemplative Christian, she was used to look at the situation from the bird's view, what really matters at the end of life. Does a little bit of money, more or less, change the situation or not? And even for other people, she did think about that, the consequences. But from the bird's view, things can become, what is in the mind and motivation and that things are more important than material things. So she said, if you really insist on suing her, I will support you. But I am really personally on my own, I'm really not in favor of that. This is because of my character, said my mother. and my beliefs and my all that. So I was thinking also about consequences and decided not to. The result was, and I got all the full support of, for the bicycle and holiday and all that from my parents. The result was, and it kept me thinking also for the future years. So, that lady who kept my money for her own purpose was known as alcoholic, and this was not the first case of trying to mishandle things. So, in support of what you were saying about one's personal attitude towards oneself, and a few years later, I heard that she was fired, not because of me, but it was just a matter of time. So this is all in support of what Geshama was saying. At the same time, what were the consequences for me? It gave me it strengthened my habit to take a larger perspective of life.
자기 기심마다 아닌 아주 프랑스 신다 상황이 손대 어디 트레이너스라 아니 대 모마레라네다 갈아버 그런 게 메시나가 아니 냠용으로 지신이 됐었어 아니 니마니마 그런 노림 딩아도 알아 롭지도 좀 봤어 로터라 뒤도 좀 봐 아니 디 사이클 진유에 지 차시에서 도진 주고서 봐 아니 딜라무이사야지도 아니 좀 계속 한다더라 어디들라 아니 내가 고쳐있어 아니 내가 다와니스레 있으라 내가 다와니스레 내가 디스카보요 레시피다 아니 너무 디스사고에 좀 봐 아니 콘센시라요 말이지 아니 니마숨스모도 다와니 내가 지있으라 니마숨스모스 콘센요 말이지 사글 좀 많이 받아 콘센시도 뭐도 손다야 디스사야지 내가 지있어 아니 응위때 두줄에도 좀 봐. 아니 응위때긴 지면 내지어줘라. 되게 몰라 아니 다와치기 응위 머신 지적이 메도스. 저랑 다와치 머신 내가 내요 말이야. 지적이 메도스. 아니 디차도 좀 봐다. 디 장고 말아봤어. 제자니 다 로바다 레로다 아니 그런 게 파마 되절기 제티스라. 다 가르쳐 버릴래도 좀 봐. 아니 레로도 저기 아니 저랑 내가 다와니니 체를 다와니 체를 방번이 요래. 다 모티브는 또 쉬어. 아니 뭐 파마를 기지팅스 파마기는 그런 게 아마디니 이슈기 지메라 이슈기 추켈링기 지메 여러 순위 지레스 아니 뭐에 라드zam바 아니 지르다네 모벳 초바자야로서 간주자야로서 디델로 추는 거예요 말이스 아니 뭐에 뭐라기 시가 되게 있어라 제자니 이 용금말 디 나이다 디잡주치도 상말이다 침도 또 아니 니바디 뭐이 가도이나요 삼노티스 자청고 땅거래에 시기레스 아니 지우지기 남네 맞다요면서 강가 통과를 봤어 뒤로 삼노티스 자청고 거래에 시기레스 디시엔도 좀 봐니 무이티스 마보지게 아니 타르둘라라 슈슈 대화다 이제 기지제 도기를 삼아야 못한다게 도스 조소소 샘지고에는 되기요레스 디시엔도 다 이나야 차한지 우주 접나스라 팀나 도구엘라 나스라 담몰라 되네 팀나 도구라네 가이쇼 접주체고라서 다 야마체네 그런 팀나 도 메서 그지베지 아니 제네다 로망고 제네 가려하고서는 좀 당고 지면 뒤에서라 아니 차라 쇼동 되니들도스 그지데 아니 디 차라 쇼동 제도 너무 나아요 말아 차라 뭐 보통 좀 많이 뭐 내가 담에들 얘기했을 때 지금의 미기무 있어 네 레봉기무 있어 되지겠어 그러니까 리갈이 뭐 내가는 뭐 비율이라 있는 수고소스 제자한테 뒤중남치 버지 쳐가지고 뭐도 뭐다 뭐라니 내가 도와지 여기 되고로지 뭐라는 미에르도스 아니 그다긴 안서 기저시인데서 뭐 미쳐다니 아주 룽랑이 미디 바라 되가지고 많이 봤으라 미디 코랑코랑나 따당로 저라 뒤에 니 배신 뭐 쪼고 요리라 했다 기저세 부차리도 왔을 텐데
하다나 정리 거의 비슷해 요라 지는 거는 남자야 나도 중지라나 앞에는 저랑 돼 있는 줄 알아 우리가 상식 다야 주주고 통해서 조금만 알아 이쁘네 보여 먼저 이제 조금만 하나 캐는 거 남자야 수세면 내지 그래 혼자 맞아야지 이래서요 조금만 알아 이다 알아 이미 맞잖아 말이야 있다 그러나 그래 보이기를 삼아 그래서 늘 강서 비슷한 시가지 아마 가진 뒤에
Yes. So thank you for sharing that. So yes, there are like real life stories like this. So then in these moments when we feel that someone is taking what belongs to us and someone is taking what we have earned for ourselves. So in this moment, in those moments, if you can get it back, then it's good enough. But if you cannot get it back, then we have this sense of attachment to what we have lost. And in order to overcome that sense of attachment, even when we come to the acceptance that this cannot be held now, I won't be able to get it back, but we still have that sense of attachment to what that was mine, that I earned that. So if you still have that kind of attachment, then you begin to suffer mentally too. So in order to overcome that sense of attachment, then it's important as dharmic practitioners to kind of let go of this situation by taking the perspective that maybe it's a debt I owe this person from my past life. Maybe this is the karmic debt that I have, that I have to repay in this life. And if you are able to do that, then it comes to a full acceptance of the situation, where you are able to let go not only of what you have lost, but also of the attachment to what you have lost.
Even without belief of reincarnation, we believe in that it's better to be a good person than a bad person in the long run.
Le jumjel thar mu pasam no madang nesra kurang ama digi mi dukja chi chole mi yaga chi chole ke chiare la di kurang gisra ani di kamju tuwe diara kamju tu mare la di ke tachuris So it was good that your mother had the foresight to advise you like this. So if you actually begin to sue this person, then you have to hire a lawyer. Your whole month's earning would be just wasted on that too. So then this reminds me of a particular verse from the 8 verses of Training the Mind, wherein the root text goes on to say that may I learn to take upon all the losses and may I learn to offer all the victory to others. So when you immediately hear such a thing, then you begin to have a sense of hesitation, like how is this possible? But then now when we begin to talk about like these examples, then these things begin to make sense, that what looks like victory, what looks like gain, victory and gain, what looks like loss, is like only for this instance. Karma takes its own course, and every action has its consequence. So then it's not about like our own gross sense of loss and gain. It's more about like how the nature of reality actually takes care of like actions and their consequences.
그냥 집어다 따로. 청소년에 하다가 내가 상담을 주다서 바가 그제 되겠습니다. 근데 군다들은 저쪽에 만들어요.
Yes. So then the dharmic texts are really vast and profound in that manner that every situation is actually accounted for in the dharmic text when we think about. So then, as we have like a very extensive discussion, very extensive exploration, citing examples from real life, using metaphors, citing imaginary hypothetical situations, citing our own examples, we have like a really detailed discussion about how we should cultivate these practices. So then, we should not leave it just at that. We should now try to cultivate this in our real life. We should try to practice this in our real life. Without that, then all the discussion is pointless, not just for you, but me as a teacher too. Like if I begin to talk about this all the time to you, and then I myself don't practice this, then it's just pointless. So now try to relate it to your own life, and try to bring these practices in your own life, and try to experiment and see if by practicing these things you gain a sense of contentment, you gain a sense of calm. Yes.
Now, I wanted to hear from you actually. Like we know the story of Guru Larippa, right? How he was inspired by a deep sense of injustice done by his family, that everything was taken from him, so he brought the things to them. But then, was it like, and Guru Marpa like punishing him or like making him do things because that was his penance, kind of for all the things he's done before. I just wanted to hear that. Like, is it?
So maybe we pick this question in the afternoon.
It's not a question. Maybe this situation is similar to that. Like maybe if it, practice forbearance, then he would have saved himself a lot of those hardship that he had to go through later.
Maybe you remind us again, and it ties both into forbearance as well as perseverance. So the discussion in the afternoon will start with the perfection of perseverance. So it kind of makes a nice link between these two. Tanda manzo milare bagi kadop chedanjera marwagi kola sedoka sundu di tlangore la kogi ni pijama masere la jera diksha yu tsudu chire di nanda manzo gi sheju gi pejera sobagi kechimbo yimba di tsudu ani manzo gi tana tigere esra di jeni manzo keja shinala yimba kajam dera sobagi chaka tsundi gi chani jados chezan tanda sheju de da ni jeni she yimba di patsu tudo ya machi tigi do le ba. Yes. So, enjoy your lunch. Enjoy your lunch with forbearance.